Good evening, everyone. Jay Saki here, coming in with a holiday Christmas season greetings episode. And I've got Giles with me. Giles,
Hello,
how are you?
everyone.
So, we just recently watched Muppets Christmas Carol from 1992, directed by Brian Henson, Jim Henson's son. I don't think Jim Henson was alive to see this one. Double checking, no,
Um,
he wasn't. He died 2 years prior to this movie coming out.
yeah, I was trying to remember when he passed on, and yeah, it was 2 years. Though, despite it being his son, it was actually a very good representation of the Muppets overall, I think.
Yes, I think it was Brian Henson's very first directorial debut.
I think it might have been his only directed film. I'd have to double check that, but I know he produced a lot of films.
No, okay, he, he,
Uh,
he went on to direct some more later Muppet projects, but that
ah,
was his directorial debut.
oh man, I completely forgot. I had listeners just completely disregard everything I personally said because he directed some of my favorite sci-fi that was done by the Jim Henson Corporation, like Farscape, along with like the depending on who you ask, possibly the greatest Muppet movie, Muppet Treasure Island.
Okay, I'm gonna have to watch that again now because I don't have strong or good memories of Muppet Treasure Island. I've heard people say that's their favorite. It's one that goes in one eyeball and then out the other eyeball, I guess, for lack of a better metaphor. I think I'm gonna have to watch it one more time and see if it can jolt some life into me because my philosophy is there's only three real Muppet films, and that is the original Muppet trilogy, the Muppet movie, The Great Muppet Caper, The Muppets Take Manhattan, and yes, then of course everybody gets their Christmas special. Then in this case it's the Muppets Christmas Carol, which is yes also good as the Muppets one and only Christmas special. And then my philosophy is everything that comes after that should just be burned. And we should just keep these movies preserved for history, untainted by what comes before and what comes after. But I guess I have to check out Muppets Treasure Island because apparently a lot of people like it.
It has a lot of very catchy songs. It's probably out of all the Muppet movies, it is way better as a musical.
See, I don't have strong memories of the songs. Okay, let's put to rest Muppet Treasure Island. But Muppet Christmas Carol. Do you think this is like the best, most definitive Christmas Carol movie made?
Okay, I'm going to say no. I think the best portrayal, in my opinion, is the Patrick Stewart Christmas Carol. But this is actually undoubtedly my favorite interpretation of the Christmas Carol.
Oh boy, we're gonna have to go off on a whole Christmas Carol debate now. How about the George C. Scott Christmas Carol?
It's fine. It's fine. I think the only one I thought I really didn't like was Scrooged.
I've never gotten all the way through that. I've watched about half of it. I liked parts of Scrooged, but that's its own animal because it's a complete comedy and a complete farce.
I kind of think that's why I don't like it because the Christmas Carol, and I might be jumping ahead here, but the essence of the Christmas Carol is a story about what if you were religious, you would say it was spiritual growth or moral growth or just the growth of a person opening up to charity and the spirit of Christmas. And Scrooged doesn't really fall into that category for me.
Right. I remember whenever I saw Scrooged, thinking that the movie was overly mean and cynical. Like, okay, you can be a little bit cynical, but obviously it wasn't even trying to embrace Christmas at all. Or I don't know. I only watched about half the movie. But anyways, the Patrick Stewart Christmas Carol, I watched that in high school freshman year because we read Christmas Carol and the teacher said let's watch Christmas Carol and we watched the Patrick Stewart version, which was interesting because I was like, oh, this was the first time I learned that Patrick Stewart was in a Christmas Carol movie. But yeah, I've not seen it since then. But okay, let's focus. So to me, amongst the various versions of A Christmas Carol, I think Muppet Christmas Carol is the best. It's the one that I grew up with the most, the one I watched the most. It was one I watched every single year. Like, tell me, which one do you watch every single year? Do you watch them all every single year?
No, just the Muppets Christmas Carol, because we did the same thing for a long time. I watch a lot of movies and Christmas specials on Christmas Day, as many people do, and I've gone through multiple times just about every film version of A Christmas Carol, and the one I enjoy the most is the Muppets Christmas Carol. So that's the one that's always on Christmas Day.
Right, okay, so to clarify, what you said before was the Patrick Stewart version to you was the best accurate adaptation, but Muppets Christmas Carol is just the most enjoyable. It's your favorite.
Yeah, we touched a bit on it the when we did our several favorite movies, and I have to distinguish between great art and the ones I find the more entertaining.
Right, as we should do. Yeah, so with this movie, where do you even begin with it? Do you have any overall thoughts by which you would... I guess if I had to say anything about it is, it's amazing just, even though it's Muppets, gosh darn it if it doesn't take its subject matter so seriously. Like, the only thing that's... Like, even though there's Muppets in it, it doesn't really take you out of the film, since it's just such a seriously told story.
Yet, for it being the Muppets, it is played so incredibly straight, and all the slapstick and comic relief is relegated to side characters like Rizzo or any of the background characters.
I actually had an interesting thought because at first I was not going to rewatch this for the review. I told myself that I had seen this movie so many times I would not have to go back to rewatch it, but I figured I should, so I did rewatch it, and I had an interesting, or at least I had it, people can judge for themselves whether or not my thoughts are interesting, but I had a thought, and that is this movie seems to have, in my opinion, a lot in common with the movie that came out a few years ago, Banshees of Inisherin. Have you watched that?
I have not, no.
Okay, basically, I heard someone describe Banshees of Inisherin as being the darkest comedy you've ever watched, and if you watch the movie and you find yourself not getting it, you have to remind yourself it's a dark comedy, just keep going darker and darker and darker, and then you get the comedy. It's like very deadpan, very subtle, and it's only in the darkness that the comedy comes out. Muppets Christmas Carol is much the same. It's like a very dark comedy. It's not one where you're always howling with laughter because it's hard to see the comedy because it's just so dark that you forget to laugh. It's so dark. For example, when Ebenezer Scrooge returns home and the head of Jacob Marley shows up on the door knocker, that should be hysterical, but it's just so dark in execution that you don't laugh. You feel nervous and afraid.
Yeah, the reason why it's dark, and the reason why every true or correct portrayal of A Christmas Carol is dark, is because it's set in, obviously, Victorian London, Victorian England. And for anyone who did their history, the Victorian era, especially the middle to late Victorian era, was heavily... I'm getting my thoughts together in a way that won't annoy people, but heavily capitalist in a very negative way. It was very much emphasizing exploitation of not just the worker, but children, the poor, and other such vulnerable people, which of course comes out in the line, are there no workhouses?
Right.
Which is essentially a place where a debtor's prison where people went to die.
Right. The Industrial Revolution had happened and was still happening, and social consciousness hadn't quite gotten to all areas of society.
Yes, profit and greed and wealth and advancement was put way above human dignity and decency, which is emphasized in Ebenezer Scrooge, who is sort of the anthropomorphization of the evils of Victorian England at the time.
Well, actually, I think Charles Dickens essentially writes about that kind of thing a lot, doesn't he?
He grew up, if I remember correctly, in a poorhouse and lost family members to poverty.
I wish I think I need to study Charles Dickens more because I think he's actually probably a very deep person. His name sounds funny. Charles Dickens, author of Oliver Twist and Christmas Carol, and you don't take him too seriously, but I think he's someone who actually like is probably like the voice of multiple generations.
He's definitely the voice of his era, which, as we've just said, was a very bleak Victorian London. But he witnessed a lot of the evils of that time firsthand and wrote about it. I don't want to get too much off on a tangent that we've already been on, but even his other works, like Oliver Twist, for example, is not a happy, cheery book all the way through.
See, I suddenly just had an epiphany just now because I just realized that Charles Dickens, he's not like a post-Christian Enlightenment thinker just raging against society, but he is like a Christian man talking like genuinely about problems in society that need to be brought to light. I hadn't really thought about that too clearly until just now that light turned on with Charles Dickens.
But not to dilute that too much either, but he's also being very clever, especially for his time, which this was not particularly done, but he presents it in a very secular way that anyone can consume.
Right. Wow, we are 15 minutes into this review and we have gone way off course. But hopefully the point of our reviews is that people learn something. It's all about learning. Okay, let's talk more about Muppets Christmas Carol. So, here are more of my thoughts on it. So I was watching it again, and I was enjoying it, but it occurred to me, it was the very first time in my life I was watching it alone in the isolation of my house. Before yesterday, I was always watching it with family, and it was always us all watching it together and joking about it and talking about the memories it invoked. But this was the first time watching it alone. And I will admit it was a little more not as fun to watch alone. A little more, I don't want it boring, if you will. I liked it, but it was definitely different watching it alone. And see, now it sounds like I'm putting the movie down. It is a great film. It is better watched with a group of people, with a family. And I'm also having to suffer from the reality of, like, I know the story. I know the story so well. I've grown up with the story. It would be very interesting to never know anything about A Christmas Carol and watch this movie for, like, the very first time. But much like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, it was there since you were 2 years old, and you can never remember the very first time you saw it. Those are just my thoughts. Say something else or add more thoughts if you like.
Well, when we're talking about the Muppets Christmas Carol, it's because it's based on a book and because it's almost faithfully a reproduction of the book, aside from a little bit of comic relief and some things that were removed because you couldn't get it into a film rating of, what was it rated in America? I believe it was Universal here, which is literally, anyone can watch it.
It was rated G here. It was a G-rated film. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a little bit of portrayal of death and the characters of ignorance and want that were not put in the film. Maybe because they would be a bit too bleak and disturbing for children. But other than that, it is a rather faithful adaptation. And if you just take the Muppets out and replace them with human actors, it would still be the same thing.
Pretty much. The thing that I think most Christmas Carol adaptations are challenged to include are the moments when Jacob Marley shows, from the book, Jacob Marley shows Ebenezer Scrooge all the damned souls drifting across, floating across the earth outside. And there's this part in the book when the Ghost of Christmas Present shows what you said before, the envy and want of the two little children.
Oh, Ignorance and Want.
Ignorance and Want. I remember that from that was in the George C. Scott movie at the very least. Those elements are often left out of a lot of the versions of Christmas Carol. But
yes, I don't think you necessarily need Ignorance and Want either to push the story forward. It's more or less repeating the same thing that is shown in the film. We can't talk further about any version of the Christmas Carol without talking about Ebenezer Scrooge, because he is primarily 90% of the film, depending on the version. In this, I guess he's more 70%. But still, it's heavily focused around him. It's a character study, and it's very focused around his transformation. And it's the way his transformation is portrayed, which I really enjoy in the film, because there's little bits that are just shown and not told to you. He obviously explains, Jacob Marley, how his chains of greed, pride, avarice, lust for worldly things had damned him, and that Scrooge had forged chains of his own making in the same way. That's explicitly spelled out for you, but there are other things, such as each ghost that visits him is a kind of portrayal of, I don't want to say possibility, but maybe more of a representation of not only his life, but the concept of maybe divinity itself in a loose sort of way, because the first ghost that comes to him is portrayed as a child, and it's portraying that very childlike experience of the Christmas and Advent season and again, this is the Victorian era, so it's a bit different from our contemporary standards. And then you have the Ghost of Christmas Present, who's more of an adult, who is more of partaking in the fruits of what you might call adult labor, or friends and family. He eats well, he drinks well, he enjoys the company of others, etc. And the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is literally death.
Bum, 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 bum. The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is another example of dark, dark, dark comedy, because he looks so creepy, and he nods his head, and the music goes bum, 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 bum. And that's actually funny as an adult, but when you're younger, that's just so terrifying. It's so funny and so deadpan, you forget that you're supposed to laugh. Yeah, I was actually just watching the special features, and apparently one of their original ideas was to have Gonzo be the ghost of Christmas Yet to Come or Christmas Future, and it was just going to be him hooded, and the only thing you see is his nose sticking out.
It would have been funny, but I think that would have been a bit too jarring for the scene.
Right. What they did probably worked better, but let's talk more about the characters. So, Michael Caine, a legend, as Ebenezer Scrooge. Would you say this was the best Ebenezer Scrooge ever put to screen?
Honestly, tied with Patrick Stewart on this, because even though I think the Patrick Stewart Christmas Carol is a work of art and definitely worth seeing, Michael Caine is giving as good a performance as Patrick Stewart does.
Oh, interesting. Okay. See, I just remember Patrick Stewart being Patrick Stewart, but I just saw Captain Picard in the hologram room being Ebenezer Scrooge. That's kind of how I saw that.
Well, Patrick Stewart has the benefit of being a Shakespearean actor before he did Star Trek.
Yeah, but he's also a Star Trek actor, which is going to taint his career forever. I mean, the point is, I can never see him as anything except Captain Picard first. But for me, the Michael Caine as Ebenezer Scrooge is the best Ebenezer Scrooge of all time. He's my Ebenezer Scrooge.
I get that, and that's probably just because you are an American and you didn't grow up on this side of the pond with Michael Caine doing many different roles.
Well, it's funny. I actually always saw Patrick Stewart as being more American, and I always interpreted Michael Caine as being more classically UK.
Well, it's funny because Patrick Stewart, he does live in America and has done for quite some time, though originally he is from Yorkshire in England.
Don't be afraid of awkward silences because the silences will just be edited out. So you can take
Yeah,
time if you
no,
have any other. If you have any other thoughts that you want to bring to light, you can bring it up as it comes
there
to
are a lot. I'm just there are a lot. I'm just trying to think now because there's a lot to go in. Just okay, start from here. There's a lot to go in with this film. I spent a little time on the ghosts or spirits as they called originally, and that is just my interpretation. But there's just so much to go into, even just with them. But I think the main through line through the entire film is that while negative things had happened to Scrooge all his life, he let the bitterness of those things shape him into adulthood. And that's how he ended up as he is as Ebenezer Scrooge.
So here's a question: what is your favorite musical number in this movie? Actually, scratch
It,
that.
it,
Scratch all that. I'm going to ask a different question, or I want to talk about something else. So here's a thought I had whenever I was rewatching it. There are so many parts in this film where multiple things are happening, and you have characters in the forefront and characters in the background. Like there's a a small little bit where Rizzo the Rat, when Scrooge is with the ghost of Christmas Past, and Gonzo is there with Rizzo. Gonzo being Charles Dickens narrating the story. He accidentally lights Rizzo's tail on fire, and he pushes Rizzo into a barrel of cold water. And then he's trying to fish Rizzo back out. And in the background, you see Ebenezer Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Past going into a building. And I'm not even sure how they did the Ghost of Christmas Past because she's there in this ghostly whisper. I'm not sure if there's CGI around her or what. But you see Gonzo doing the one thing, getting Rizzo out of the barrel, and you see Scrooge and the Ghost of Christmas Past in the background doing some things. And that's a very specific kind of filmmaking that is vanishing because nowadays they film movies nowadays to. If you watch a lot of Marvel movies, they do this thing where they film characters in isolation. So if there's three characters talking in a room, they constantly have close-ups on everybody's faces when they're talking, with no other character around. That way, if they have to do reshoots or re-edits, they don't have to worry about who was or who was not in the room. They can just re-edit things around to make the movie how they wanted to make it, essentially. Whereas in older films, there are more scenes where they'll have elongated shots with multiple things happening. They have to think about consistency, who's standing where, when things are being shot. And you see that all throughout this movie, especially that one shot I just mentioned. Sorry if I'm taking a long time to explain this, but all throughout the movie, there's all these little consistency things going on where they have to have Bob Cratchit here, the workers here, Scrooge here. And today, I know they would film everything with close-up isolated shots of everyone's faces when they're talking, just so if they have to re-edit or refilm or reshoot, they can rearrange things to make the movie one way or the other. Tangent over. Just small things to be appreciated that warm my cold, dead heart.
Well, speaking of small things, you mentioned the Ghost of Christmas Past. I do know this one, and it's a tribute to how inventive Jim Henson Studios is, in that to get that effect, they filmed the puppet submerged in a tank of water and overlaid it with a green screen.
See, that is just so cool. Because I was just watching, I purchased a Muppets Christmas Carol online the other day, and it came with the bonus features, and it was showing them doing retake after retake on certain shots because they're the Muppets are all singing here, and they didn't quite turn their heads at the same time when they sing there goes Mr. Humbug, there goes Mr. Grinch. It shows Brian Henson being like, cut, you guys weren't quite moving the lips together to sync up correctly. They have to turn at the same time. And he's going through it again and again. And you just know they wouldn't take that much time to do this. They'd find too many shortcuts today.
Well, today it would all be CGI.
That too, or they just be like, musical numbers are too complicated. Let's just not have it. Let's not have
Well,
this many puppets singing at the exact same time. We have to move their mouths at the same time. We'll have one puppet singing and then one puppet here, because we got to just make it a little bit easier.
I think, well, the Jim Henson Studios by this time had a gigantic wealth of experience when it came to puppets and synchronizing puppets and large sets with puppets. And one of the prohibitive things is that doing that is surprisingly expensive. There is a lot of money, time and money, which ends up exacerbating either
It,
when it goes into filming puppets.
is it really expensive though? See, my theory is that it's actually cheaper. It's just nobody wants to be hassled by having to deal with puppets and things, so they're like, let's just do more expensive CGI. I mean, at the time, the budget for this movie was 12 million. So
In 1992,
yes, that was still pretty cheap for 1992, I think.
but puppets at the time, and another slight tangent. Jim Henson and Jerry Anderson, who were American, actually got their shows denied in America because they were too fiddly and too expensive. And they came over to Britain, where we already had a tradition of putting puppets on television. And that's when we get successful things like the Muppets, Fraggle Rock, Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, which had the highest budgets of any television show for the longest time. I think it's only in the modern era when more money was put on television shows. But
Right, I feel like I keep remembering that I keep hearing the Muppets in being synonymous with the UK. I can never recall why though.
it's because they would. It was pitched to American TV executives, and they thought puppets were stupid. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but they thought puppets just weren't going to work, so
Well,
they brought it to Britain, where we already had puppet television shows.
you tell me though. Well, the Muppet Show, the original Muppet Show, that was an American produced show, right? Unless you know something I don't.
Nope, it was made in London.
Oh wow. So it was made in the UK for a UK audience, and then it was obviously imported over to the US after it became successful.
Yes, but it was made by Americans in London.
Yeah, the more you know, the more you know. Everyone, it's all about the education with this show. What was this the UK show that had to do with like a squirrel character in his courtroom?
I'm drawing a blank on that.
It starts off, it's like, I don't know, something the squirrel, and it's like, ha 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 ha! And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to Google something.
I have an extensive knowledge of weird British TV shows, and I'm drawing a blank on that one, I'm afraid. Are you maybe thinking of Basil Brush?
Basil Brush! Basil Brush, is that the one?
That's a fox. That's a
Oh.
fox, not a squirrel.
Okay. Thank you. Basil Brush. And Basil Brush was not produced by Jim Henson?
No, that was a different company, a British company.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so this is interesting that like the UK had more puppet-oriented shows, so that's what allowed Jim Henson to do what he did over there.
Same with Jerry Anderson.
Okay, so once again, for the umpteenth time, let's bring it all back to Muppets Christmas Carol. So, any favorite characters in this movie, other than Ebenezer Scrooge?
Okay, if we eliminate Ebenezer Scrooge, which is, like I said, he's at least 70% of the film, I am going to say, it might be an obvious choice, but it's going to be Kermit as Bob Cratchit.
I mean, who else would play Bob Cratchit other than Kermit?
Yeah, like the second choices would be like the numerous background characters, including like Rizzo the Rat, who is the majority of the comic relief for the film.
I feel like this was Rizzo the Rat's debut. I think he technically started in Muppets Take Manhattan, but I don't think they called him Rizzo by name, but obviously in that one he became an identifiable character. So I think he transferred over from that, and I think they gave him the name Rizzo for this movie. Double check me on that one, audience. Okay, I don't want you taking my word for it, but research that. I think this was the first movie he became known as Rizzo the Rat, and then he became more popular and showed up in other things like Muppets Treasure Island and Muppets in Space and so on and so forth.
Yeah, if we're horribly wrong, tell us in the comments. I know you're dying to.
I was gonna say I really liked Jacob and Robert Marley.
Yeah, they're not really in the film for that long, though.
I just thought it was funny that those two guys would show up, the two old codgers.
Well,
that was also a really terrifying moment as a kid. Like, it's another one of those things. Like, the fire goes out, the bell is ringing, no, 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 no. Then the fire goes out, and the camera pans over, like, what's gonna come up the stairs? Then, ha 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 ha! We're your partners, Jacob and Robert Marley. And it's like it's so terrifying, but you forget, like, oh yeah, this is hilarious that they showed up.
I think it's another aspect of the film that we haven't really mentioned yet. We've sort of almost touched on it, in that while most of the cast are the Muppets, they're not playing their Muppet characters. I know it sounds obvious, but a lot of their mannerisms as the Muppets are subdued or removed to play the characters in this film.
True. There's one humorous moment where they break with that when Gonzo and Charles Dickens and Rizzo the Rat, I think they fall off the wagon, and then Rizzo the Rat says, "Hey, Gonzo, are you okay? I mean, Mr. Dickens." Calls him Gonzo for a moment.
That's it's just the interesting thing is, like, Miss Piggy is not Miss Piggy. She is Bob Cratchit's wife.
Yes.
And Fozzie Bear is not Fozzie Bear. He is Bob. He is Scrooge's old boss. Same thing with the rest of the characters.
Old Fezziwig.
Old Fezziwig, yes. But the only one that is actually the character that he is in the Muppets is Animal.
Did they actually call him Animal?
No, he's never referred to by name, but he plays the drums in that musical scene.
Oh, sure. He's just playing himself, same as everyone in the band. You know who I really love is the Swedish Chef. He shows up. Little side tangent here. The Swedish Chef is my favorite. He's my favorite Muppet. I've watched a whole bunch of the original Muppet Show on DVD, and anytime they go to a Swedish Chef bit, hurdy schmurdy, wordy wordy, or hurdy schmurdy, I just lose it. He is the best thing ever. And he is the one moment where I do laugh in this movie. With this movie, I said it's a dark comedy. You forget to laugh once the Swedish Chef shows up. Hurdy, schmurdy, wordy. My mother told me to never eat singing food. I just get this big grin on my face. The cure to all ailments, if you are a miserable, depressed, anxiety-driven person, watch clips of Swedish Chef. You will become a happier person afterwards.
Yeah, we've spoke a lot about the cast, really, and not a great deal on the story, even though we kind of have. The story is, it's, I don't want to say it's lacking, and I don't want to say it's simple, but everyone knows the story, and you could go on to theoretical deep dives about the psychology of it, but it is really, man has a change of heart, becomes good person.
It's a pretty unique story because there's no other story like it. Like, there's not a genre that is man goes to bed at night and is visited by spirits who show him about his life. And maybe it should have been a genre, but maybe it would have been too obvious what you're copying. I know if there is a genre, the genre is parroting A Christmas Carol. That is interesting. Like I said, there's not a genre of Christmas Carol type stories. There's only one Christmas Carol, and everything is a version or a parody of A Christmas Carol. You can't make an original story that's like A Christmas Carol with not being an on the nose, oh yeah, it's A Christmas Carol.
I think there's only one movie that comes close to it, in terms of not necessarily its story, but its themes, and that's It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes, that is the closest. A Wonderful Life is different. It's very different, but it does have. It's the only other story I can think of where a spirit visits someone to show them some alternate reality of their life.
During Christmas.
Yes, that I'd never quite thought about that before, but thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Yeah, there's a lot of Christmas films where you have to get into like the spirit of Christmas, but it's usually focused around like a fairy tale Santa Claus esque type thing, which are not bad films, but they're not spiritual films like a Christmas Carol and A Wonderful Life are.
Okay, so here's a. Let's talk about the musical numbers because I think there's a lot of good ones in here. Starting with what's your favorite musical number from the movie? The one that you look forward to the most?
Oh, the start of the film. Here comes Mr. Humbug.
I think that's probably my favorite also.
It's so catchy. It's so good, and the scale of it when it comes to filming is very large considering all the moving parts.
He must be so lonely, he must be so sad, but surely deep down there's a good man inside. Yeah.
Thanks for your rendition.
But so yeah, I think yeah, right off the bat, that's the one that comes to my mind the most. But I think I like them all because then you have like there's something in the air tonight. There's something in the air. When they're closing down the
Mhm.
business, that one definitely like hit me in the right spot as a kid.
Um, I know we were talking about singing and songs and music, but you just reminded me about one part of the film which they didn't skip out on, and it always kind of surprises me considering what it is and what the audience is, but they just straight up include it in the film, which is the death of Tiny Tim.
Yes, that was there. Are you saying that skips out? What are you saying about that exactly?
Well, exactly. Is that considering the audience, like this is a family film, but it's primarily the audience is for younger people, especially
Right.
since it's the Muppets. And during the visitations, they just straight up tell Scrooge, "Your actions caused the death of a child."
Yeah. Well, they went all the way with it. And what more, Scrooge caused the death of a Muppet frog child.
The worst kind of death.
So once again, you should almost be laughing hysterically at it, but you're not. Because
But if you
once again, it's the darkest comedy ever written put to screen.
But of course, by the end of the film, he has a change of heart and becomes more charitable and a nicer person. And it's in some ways kind of strange, the reasons for turning around, because it doesn't. I'm not saying it's selfish, but the visitation, the last visitation, is just here's what happens after you die. Everyone hates you.
So okay, here's a question: when they have that whole section, on a serious note, audience, do you ever contemplate how people are going to talk about you after you die? Are you ever like, oh gosh, when I die, are people gonna be like, well, he was never needed. The best thing he did was dying to relieve us of his presence.
I mean, it's tradition in just about every country of not to speak ill of the dead, but you have to be a very horrific person for that to be waived. and it's just odd to see, especially when you see the other bankers saying they're only going to his funeral because it has free food.
I feel like when I was younger and they mentioned that point, like, oh, yes, if lunch is provided, I'd be like, yeah, would lunch be provided?
Like, no one cares, which is kind of a slight, to me anyway, a slightly odd reason to convert. But I think personally, by the time he got to the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, he had already converted.
Oh, definitely. But, sometimes it's one thing to convert to do the bare minimum, but, Scrooge had to convert to the maximum. Don't half bake your conversion. Go all the way. If they left it at the Ghost of Christmas Present, then he probably would have woke up the next day and been a little better. But, he went all after the Ghost of Christmas Future, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. He went all out. Like, he's going to make Christmas the best Christmas ever.
Yeah, I don't necessarily. I'm going slightly back on what I said, not necessarily, but kind of, in that I don't necessarily think that part of the conversion was because people hated him after he died. I think more it's showing him the impact he had on others. And it's seeing the things people say about you when you're not there to witness it.
Yeah, that is interesting. That's something I think more about as an adult. Shall we put ourselves in a vulnerable moment and be like, what do others say about us? Do they say that Jay Saki and Giles are kindly people who make Christmas better every year? Or are they like, oh, Jay Saki and Giles, the worst old sods who ever lived, who just bring down the room with their presence? You don't have to answer that, but it is an impactful moment. It is something that I think the Christmas Carol story makes you think about because you will die someday and you will leave this earth having made everyone's lives around you better or having made everyone's lives around you worse.
How bad an impact do you have to have on people's lives that they are thankful that you are dead? I mean, that is reserved for like the worst murderers and tyrants.
I think there's always going to be someone who doesn't like you. I don't mean you specifically, but you, the audience, or including me. There's always going to be someone who doesn't like you who will be grateful for your death. And that's somewhat of an inevitable.
Yes, but this was all of London, maybe
All
all
of
of
London.
England.
Well, let's try to minimize in our lives how many people are thankful for our deaths. There's always going to be someone who's thankful for your death, but let's try to minimize that. You see, I'm glad I rewatched this movie because it gives me things to think about. You need to make everyone's lives grateful and happier around you. And good heavens, I don't always like to bring the time into these reviews, but it's now. We've been doing this for a while now. This movie provoked a lot of juicy conversation. Okay, because I was wondering if this review would be done like 30 minutes, but it's a Christmas Carol, so it was always bound to provoke lots of conversation. Because I think a good story does provoke conversation like that. That just shows just how good of a story Charles Dickens wrote, and how good of a movie hence Jim Henson Productions made.
Well, I'm not going to say any final thoughts because that's your that's your line. But in 1992, other Christmas films that came out, um, one I think is very much underrated was Home Alone 2.
I watched that one like ages ago back in the 90s on TV. That's one that I actually have to go back and rewatch. I've always brushed it off because a lot of people said, oh, not as good as the first. and it's a Christmas movie, so it's like, how good can a Christmas movie be? But I guess I should really sit down and watch that again just to get an education and opinion.
I enjoyed Home Alone 2. I think they went rapidly downhill after that. But considering we go over films that came out in the same year, um, every time we do one of these, uh, what else came out that year, Christmas wise? And honestly, there's not much. There's Home Alone 2 and Batman Returns.
Where were you in 1992?
Oh, how old was I in 1992? I was, um, well, I was at home.
I
I
was
was still in school.
I was 2 years old. I'm. It's one of my little small perks in life is I was born in the year 1990. So every year of my life, it's like 1991, I turned one. 1992, I turned two. 1998, I turned eight. So it's a very easy. It's easy for me to remember what age I was every year. I think in 1992, I don't know what I would have gotten for Christmas that year. 93 and 94, I got a chocolate Thomas the Tank Engine.
I honestly don't remember um, much of that time. I was a bit too young and it was a bit too long ago.
Per usual, we're always getting so far ahead of ourselves. We didn't finish talking about all the musical numbers. So, like, it feels like Christmas. Wherever you find love, it feels like Christmas. I think that's a totally legit song.
It's a very good song. I don't think there's a bad song in this.
And then they basically bring that around again at the very end. Oh, actually, speaking of, like, people talking about you after you're dead, not just that, but there's the scene when Scrooge goes to. I just want to acknowledge, audience, we have done this review like totally out of order. We didn't have the structure. That's how it is. We just talk about what we feel like talking about. But we got to get everything in there. The bit when Scrooge goes to, he's with the ghost of Christmas present, and he goes to his nephew's house. Whatever his nephew's name, and he's like having a Christmas party, and then he's like, "Let's play a guessing game. Think of this creature that I'm thinking of." It's like, oh, it's not a cockroach, it's not a rat, it's not unwanted. Who is it? Ebenezer Scrooge. And Scrooge just has to like witness himself being talked about.
I'll interject there. There's one thing I like about that, in that his nephew never speaks poorly of him.
But he does. He literally makes a guessing game, and the joke is that his uncle, Ebenezer Scrooge, is the worst person ever who's unwanted.
I fairly remember that he was not too fond of that. I'm maybe thinking more of the book.
No, but Bob Cratchit never talks ill of Ebenezer Scrooge. He's like, let's give a toast to Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. Like, that is saint level wisdom there. But whatever the heck the nephew's name is, definitely makes fun of him at the party.
Robert, I believe it was. I think it was Robert.
No, Fred. Fred is the
Fred,
nephew.
yes, Frederick.
Yeah, don't you remember the scene where he's like dumping on Scrooge?
I do not know. I'd skipped my mind.
Goes to a Christmas present. He takes him to like the house party, and he's like, "Let's play a guessing game." I thought you watched this movie every single year.
The one scene skips my mind, and you give me the third degree.
He's like, "A guessing game. Guess who I'm thinking of? What are you thinking of? A creature? Yes. Is it belong in London? Yes, it does. Is it not wanted? Definitely not. Is it a rat? No. A cockroach? No." And then it's like, okay, it's unwanted. It's not. It's a creature. It's not wanted, but it's not a rat or a roach. Ebenezer Scrooge. And then that's when Scrooge feels all disheartened. How don't you remember that scene?
I don't. I do now, but it skipped my mind.
Whatever, it's another scene that's like, what are people saying about you when you're not around?
There's one last song I'll cover, which I think, considering all of them, is probably in the top three, and that's "When Love Is Gone."
Was that okay? So like the song when Ebenezer's like, we can't marry this year. I love you, Belle, and she's like, we once loved, and then she sings that song, "When love is gone, when love is gone." Right, that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so my family history here. We had the VHS of the movie, and it had that song. Decades later, when everyone's getting DVDs, we get the DVD of Muppets Christmas Carol, and it doesn't have that song. That song's like skipped out. And there's a big debate like, was this the theatrical version or not? And like, I think some of my sisters recall, like, yeah, that they had that song in the theatrical version. But later versions that they released on DVD, on Blu-ray, that song was gone. And you have to research like the history of like why that was or was not included. Whenever I bought it online the other day via Amazon, they didn't have that song. That part was just skipped out. So what version did you watch? Do you have this available on VHS or DVD or something?
Yeah, I've got it on Blu-ray.
Do they have the "When Love Is Gone" song?
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about though? When some versions don't have that.
I have never not seen it.
She did like in the version I bought. She's like, "We once loved, we once loved," and then she gets up and walks away, and that's it. The song is just skipped out. There's no reason to have it not be there. Okay, now I think we seriously have to wrap down this review because we've gone on for a long time. Any last thoughts at all? Any last Christmas thoughts at all?
In the context of this video, watch the Patrick Stewart version and then add the Muppets Christmas Carol to your yearly rotation.
I would have to watch the Patrick Stewart version again to get an honest assessment. I'll just say I think the Muppets Christmas Carol it's my Christmas Carol movie. I'll at the very least say, if others disagree, it's a very good Christmas Carol movie. Yeah, I guess that's it. I've already said everything else. I think the point of all these reviews is always the education. I think we talked a lot about a lot of knowledge around the movie, a lot of history of the movie. Because remember, folks, all art is educating your mind in some way. So be careful of what you consume. Clearly, Ebenezer Scrooge is a product of consuming bad art, and you have to consume good art. You have to consume good art around Christmas because good art and education makes you a better person. And if we are not doing that here at the Jay Saki YouTube channel, then we are failing. And to that I say, I'm sorry. And have a very Merry Christmas.